Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Called Bank Sports. The Utah Jazz are on a tear with the longest win streak in the NBA, and it's just been so fun to watch. So AllStar voting opened up a couple days ago, and the real question is, how many Jazz players can get onto the AllStar team? So I think Donovan Mitchell is the closest to a lock that you have. He's been injured a couple games with a concussion, and he had a slow start to the season. So I would say the most deserving player right now is actually Rudy Gobert, who has just by far and away been the best defensive player in the league this season so far. And then you have another player who we're going to get into talking about that should honestly have been a 6 to 7 time All-Star, but currently has 0 appearances. So
Joe Ingles.
I wish. I would love to see Joe make it in as a reserve, but we are talking about the one, the only Mike Conley Jr. So what's kind of your take on Mike Conley never being an All-Star, Dale?
I think it's kind of a most popular opinion, but if Mike Conley was in the East, he would have been an All-Star probably 2, 3, 4 times. But looking at his career in the West, he always had to go up against players like Damian Lillard, Steph Curry, Chris Paul. So there's always a lot of awesome point guards in the West. And as good as Mike Conley is and was, I wouldn't say he's better than players like Steph or Chris Paul. So it's kind of sad how that works, that it's by conference. I'm kind of for just getting rid of the conference since they're doing the draft anyway. And then players like Mike Conley would see more action in the All-Star game. But it's unfortunate, but that's how it was.
Yeah. And I do think you'd see still a lot of players coming out of the East. There is All-Star level talent. There's superstar level talent. And just look at the Nets and look at the 76ers. Whether you like it or not, Ben Simmons is going to be an All-Star this year. And the one, honestly, that irks me the most is Trae Young, who absolutely great player, but I think is too young to be receiving All-Star votes when he only plays on one side of the ball and is also playing on the Hawks, who, well, they have had an okay start to this season, overall are just a very mediocre team. And to see Conley lose out on a lot of votes because of him being on a mediocre team, and then, well, you have to fill out the ballot in the East. And so Trae Young ends up sneaking in there, just definitely shows why having it by conference is unfair. And as we move towards positionless basketball, I feel like we should also try to move towards conferenceless basketball as well.
We should have positionless voting for the All-Star game too, and I just vote for 5 point guards.
Yes, there we go.
just see completely small ball for the starters.
Let's be honest here. If when they move to semi-positionless with front court and back court, what we're more likely than not going to see is absolutely no centers going to the All-Star game. Like Gobert will hopefully make it this year. And if you want to go watch our live stream last night, we talked a bit about, is Davis a center? And I feel like he is. He's just more of a stretch 5, but he'll make it. But how many centers are actually going to make it to the All-Star game? Since All-Star game is to watch offense, and as much as I love Gobert, that's not exactly what he does.
Yeah, and I would not be surprised if in 5 years it's normal that you just don't have centers in the starting lineup and you only get the reserves, because the reserves is it chosen by coaches or coaches and players? I feel like they change that up every few years.
Something like that. I think the coaches get a say, which leads to an interesting wrinkle since Quin Snyder could be the coach this year. So we'll talk about that in a couple minutes.
Just Juwan Morgan.
Oh, gosh. But Mike Conley had an interview yesterday or the day before, I believe, on the Woj cast. And Woj straight up asked him, he said, you'd be a 6, 7 time All-Star, no questions asked if you were in the East. How do you feel about that? And Conley didn't give the well, I'm just here to play the game, yada, yada, yada. He's like, no, that sucks. And I really want to be an All-Star this year. And he compared the Jazz to the Atlanta Hawks team of 7-8 years ago, where they were the 1 seed going into the All-Star game. They were the 1 seed going into the end of the season, and they had 4 All-Stars. And he said that straight up, he wants to see Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, himself, and Jordan Clarkson all dressed up for the All-Star game this year. We might not get one, but he wants all of them to be selected as All-Stars, which I definitely think, while JC is a larger push, they all could very much so be there.
That would be insane. Has there ever been like a 6th man to make it as an All-Star? I'm trying to think of the biggest stretch, and like I know Kyle Korver made it that year with the Hawks, and he was starting, but he would definitely he probably would have been the 6th man on a lot of other teams. So.
This is straight shade, but Dwayne Wade, his last season.
His last season, he was the team. Like they didn't really have much else around him.
Yeah, and I mean I respect. He did a lot for the NBA, and he's done a lot of great things. So I respect him getting an invite there from the East. If he had taken someone's spot on the West, I maybe would feel a bit worse about that. But the East can throw in their appearance picks, their beauty picks if they want.
That one, it was just Adam Silver. He added an extra spot on the East and the West. And it was kind of funny when he announced it, because he's like, because we know Dwayne Wade's retiring, and at this point Dirk hadn't announced that he was retiring, but he's like, but when you watch this other player play, like he's having a tough time getting up and down the court, so I'm guessing he's retiring. And I was like, oh, ouch.
That is straight cold. Okay, so I mean the Jazz right now are the 1 seed, so hopefully they can push that out. We are recording this on the day that they beat the day after they beat the Mavericks for the 2nd time. So if they stay the 1 seed going into the All-Star break, Quin Snyder and his coaching staff would get to coach. I didn't realize that that's how it works, but whoever is the 1 seed, their coaching staff gets to coach the All-Star game. So if he was able to pick a few Jazz players, I do think you'd see bare minimum Mike Conley dressing up for that game.
That it'd be a tough one, like honest, like because it is the West is that deep, and there's only so many roster spots. I think Mike Conley, he's been playing at I'd say a borderline All-Star level this year. He's been a lot better than I expected, and so I think definitely you'd see Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert if Quin is the coach. The tough part though is like Quin has some pressure. I'm sure he'll have a little bit of pressure around the league, because it's like, who is he leaving out? Is he leaving out like a Devin Booker or a Chris Paul? Which, if you look at stats, Conley has better stats than Chris Paul this year. But I feel like Chris Paul's almost a legacy pick. I feel like any other coach would pick him. So that's a tough one there. But I think like that's definitely Conley's best chance, is if Quin is selected as coach.
See, and the fact that Chris Paul would be a legacy pick is the exact reason why Conley should get in as like a legacy pick, because there are those players. And here's my opinion. We can talk a bit more about whether or not we think the game should be played and if they should actually have a game. But if you look at it, I don't think that certain players should be allowed to play. I don't think there should be a game to begin with, but I don't think Kawhi Leonard should be allowed to play in the All-Star game. I feel like if you are frequently being load managed, that you should not be permitted that opportunity to play, because I definitely think that he has some knee problems, and that load management is something necessary for Kawhi Leonard. And I just think that load management should extend through the All-Star break, that if you're not able to consistently play your games, and if you need that rest, then you should take a week off and not play in the All-Star game. And I would honestly like to see the league implement that. I don't know what your thoughts are. I know that might be a hot take, but
well, like, to be honest, I probably take the All-Star game less seriously than most people, because it was originally made just as like a fanfare, like for the fans to see all the best players on the court at the same time. And so I think now it's kind of funny because the internet is around and a much bigger thing, and there's always just trolls and jokesters. So like you're getting Taco Fall trying to get voted in, but like my opinion is I don't think there should be, because I think right now there's like some monetary benefit if you're an all-star and like people take that into account. I think it
Yeah.
should just be fans get to pick their teams and like let's see what happens. If we want a team of all 7-footers plus, then let's get a team of all 7-footers plus. But that's not how it is. So I should probably treat it a little more seriously because there is more reputation and money on the line.
Yeah, and even without that, like if fans picked the team, we just have the Lakers starting. Like if that was straight up what happened.
We get Taylor Horton Tucker, and
do we want
like
the best teams? Yeah. Do we want the best teams out there, or do we want the teams with the biggest markets putting all of their players out there?
Yeah, and then, well, I feel like enough people, because the thing with big market teams is they have a lot more fans, but I feel like most of their fans aren't diehard fans. They're just like,
Yeah.
okay, like we won a championship, great. But then if you get the smaller market teams, like it's like they're on every basket, like they're like our team has to win. So that's what's great about small market teams is I think like that's why places like Utah, it's tough to play at home because everyone in that arena is like a diehard fan, like even up in the nosebleeds and the like when those are open. So like I think that's what makes small market awesome, and like you'll see more people from Utah going on and voting Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell every single day than you will Laker fans. That's my opinion, and obviously like that's not database at all, so we'll see if that's right or not.
We need to get up with the Wall Street's Bet subreddit, and we need to just say, can you like troll the NBA by going and voting for Jordan Clarkson and Mike Conley every day, and then we'll have a straight Jazz starting lineup if we get them to throw in Gobert and Mitchell as well. So we'll get on that. But well, so I feel like the other big question is like we're gonna have all-star teams. They're gonna at least vote all-stars. But should a game actually be played? Well, what are your thoughts on that, Dale?
I think they should make the teams an NBA 2K and have all the players play as themselves.
I think that's a much better idea than actually playing the game. I mean, the game's going to be late March, and not everyone's going to be vaccinated. And we've seen enough postponements, I think mainly based on contract tracing. So I really give props to the NBA that they're not saying like, oh, well, this player's probably good, so they can play. That is easier to say as a Jazz fan who haven't had any major players been taken out due to COVID restrictions. But I just feel like with COVID, it's not a great idea to bring together like 30 players from 22 different teams and try to play a game.
Yeah, it'd be tough logistically. The NBA has been super careful, like you said. So I think if they did, they'd do it right. It'd be really careful, and I don't think it would be a like any. I don't think it would lead to anything bad. But that being said, because it'd probably be like no fans, like very few people there. It'd be like a bubble all-star game. But if I was the NBA, I would honestly consider like, is this worth it? Like, do people care enough about the all-star game to watch this? And they're not making nearly as much money. So I don't know. I bet that'd be something that the league and the players will discuss here in probably a month or so to see, is this actually worth it for anyone, or do you just want a week and a half off? Go spend time with your families.
I think that's better, and like hopefully they only spend time with their families and don't go out and do something crazy, which could happen. But let's say, that like they're practicing and doing stuff, and I totally, they're not going to always be 6 feet apart, maxed up. Like they're going to work hard to do it. But let's say all of a sudden Kevin Durant, well, not Kevin Durant. Let's say Jason Tatum gets COVID, and he was around Kevin Durant, and he was around Joel Embiid and Rudy Gobert and LeBron James, like close enough where all of a sudden you have to say, okay, Gobert, you're quarantined. LeBron, you're quarantined. KD, you're quarantined. Like Joel Embiid, you're quarantined. And then all of a sudden you have 10 days, like 7 to 10 days of quarantine of 4 players on like top 8, 9 teams in the league. And you still have to go back and play some games. Like, is the fanfare of an All-Star game worth the cancellations that could come
All
afterwards?
the All-Stars.
All the All-Stars get quarantined. Is that what we want? And that's not what I want. I mean, obviously, as a Jazz fan, like, they're rolling and I want them to keep playing. Maybe if you're a Golden State fan, you're like, no, the only good thing I'll get to see is Steph Curry go play the All-Star game. But I just don't think it's worth the risk. I know they're trying to do some stuff to like maybe bring heightened awareness to historically Black universities and which are also historically underfunded and like help with that, which is great. But I just don't think All-Star Game and COVID go together.
You know what you're talking about sounds like a great plan. We should move the All-Star Game to right before the second round of the playoffs and then have any Jazz All-Star be out for like concussion protocol.
Oh gosh. Yeah. What actually happened is the NBA just didn't want Donovan to light up Luka. They're investing in Luka, and so they decided not to play Donovan to hope that Luka could destroy the Jazz, and it kind of backfired. That's what actually happened these last couple of games.
So last game, the second game was nationally televised, and so obviously they bring with the Mavericks, and so they bring in like national anchors to call that game on ESPN. And it was really kind of annoying listening to them because like they like knew the Jazz players' names, but they like didn't really talk about them. They were all talking about like the Mavs players and Rick Carlisle and Luka and how great he is, how amazing he is. And I'm just like okay, like they're not winning this game. They're down by 20 right now.
No,
can you call? And then one of them, I think it was Doris Burke. Not to go against her. I
love Doris
Burke.
I think
she's a great anchor.
Both love Doris Burke.
But I thought it was hilarious because she kept saying Quin Snyder. I was like that. Like it's so close that like you can get away with it. So that's probably why she kept saying that.
Yeah.
People probably heard it right, but then no one corrected her because they thought it was right. So I thought that was kind of funny.
No, it's just. That's the thing, and that's why I really love listening to local people. Not doing a personal plug, but I just think it's great since I don't expect Doris Burke and Lacombe, I think was the other guy, to like go out and watch every Jazz game. Like, frankly, it's just not going to happen. And from a national perspective, they did a pretty good job. But when you're watching it as a Jazz fan, they're not hitting on like all the notes that you get when you listen to David Locke, like just delve into the Jazz statistically. So I really am excited to hopefully see the Jazz get a bit more respect. I don't think Clarkson will make it in there, and I don't think Conley will make it in there, but we're going to leave the voting link and the voting information in the chat, and let's go spam it for Conley and for Gobert. Donovan will make it. But let's try to get those two guys in there since they really deserve it. And it would just be amazing to see 3 Jazz players make it to the All-Star game this year, whether or not they're in the game.
Yeah, and the great news is, like, even if they're not starting, because it's going to be probably tough to get any Jazz player as a starter. Like, honestly, like Donovan he's going to be picked for a reserve, like almost 100% unless everyone comes and votes him as a starter outside of the Jazz. But if you get all those players like enough, which is like, oh, like they were like borderline starter, they were like one player away, then it's going to be a lot easier for the coaches to pick those Jazz players. So even if we can't get them as starters, because that's actually where a vote counts, we can like make it an easy pick for coaches to say, okay, fans really wanted them, so I'll throw them onto the roster as well.
Yeah.
So let's try to get 3 on there.
So thank you guys so much for listening. Here's a plug. After every post game, we do a live stream on YouTube. So if you're listening to our podcast right now, whether it be on YouTube or on audio only, please come and join us after those games. It's a lot of fun. The live chat's been going just through the roof these last couple games, and we've been able to just really have some great conversations. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you after the next Jazz game.